Without further ado, Davana Brown.
Well, how to begin after that? First and foremost, I just want to express my gratitude and appreciation to our beloved Lord, Avatar Meher Baba, who truly has prompted you all to want to invite me here to Meher Abode, to Baba's home here in Los Angeles. I'm deeply touched by it because, really speaking, this Southern California Center for Meher Baba is my old, see, I'm showing how old I am, old stomping grounds. And it is the place where I also was invited for the very first time after Eruch passed away. You all were the ones who said, please come and share what your life was like. So although you all are very excited, and have shown it in your loving eyes and smiles and seeing me here today, it is equally from my heart to yours. I express the gratitude of his being with us all today, and you're wanting me to be here. It's a great homecoming, so thank you. Okay, are we finished? Can we leave now? I want to begin this chat today, and today really it's a chat. I don't have really much prepared. I'm just hoping spontaneously Baba will guide me to share with you what he would want you to hear. And in that, there will be stories, and there will be some passages from the book that I just wrote. And I'm hoping that, Baba always wanted a lively atmosphere. Although Baba maintained silence for 44 years, Eruch would always say that Baba didn't want people just sitting around and staring, gazing, quiet, not talking, asking. He wanted a lively atmosphere. So in that, please feel free to ask me any questions that are bothering you. Obviously, I'm not Baba and I'm not Eruch, but if I can share with you what I have gathered from being with his Mandali, I'm more than happy to. And if it's something that I can't answer, forgive me, but I'll just say I don't know. I wasn't there with Baba in this lifetime. But one thing I do believe that the Mandali have said over and over again through the years that I have been blessed to know them, and that is we all are his parivar. Parivar in Hindi means family, and it hasn't just happened now. Although you may not really know each other all really well, it all comes from the past. And what is that past? It's your connection to him. Because Baba has said that none can dare to cross his threshold unless and until he wishes it. And I'm just going to put this a little addendum to that. Naturally, when Baba said it, he was referring at that time to people crossing the threshold, to meeting him in person. But the bigger sense of it is to cross that threshold that allows us to make him as our own Baba. And that can only happen if he has made it possible for you. And it can only happen from the past. So although we may not recognize each other from past lives, really we're all connected because of our love for him. And that brings me to one of my favorite quotes, which was also a favorite quote of Eruch's. And what I just said to you all just now, I hadn't planned to say it, but actually it's pertinent to what I did plan to share with you because I love this quote so much. This is from The Perfect Master by Yazid al-Bastami. And in my life with Eruch, it began and it ended in a sense with my reading to him. And Eruch was a very well-read person on his own, but he loved to hear stories of the saints and the masters, and of course Baba's stories too. But he had grown up from childhood, from babyhood, sitting on his mother's lap. And you know, if you're a mom, and I'm a mother, you read to your baby little storybooks. And many of those books go through generations of mothers and then daughters who become mothers because they're much-loved stories. In Eruch's life, what were the much-loved stories? They weren't necessarily Goodnight Moon, but they were the stories of the saints and masters and the stories of loving God. So from babyhood, his mother gave him that understanding or that love for wanting to mold one's life in the way to love God. So when we were reading one day and I found this quote, and he says, "Oh, type that up. I really love that quote. Let's keep it." So this is the quote. In the beginning, now mind you, it's a perfect master, so he's speaking before he became that. In the beginning, I was mistaken in 4 respects.
I've been wanting to find this, and I couldn't find it anywhere. For years.
Well, maybe that's why Baba is having me read it today, Jonathan. That is Jonathan, right? Where is my glasses? Okay, now I can see that it is you. Okay, yeah. But then I can't read the the quote then. In the beginning, I was mistaken in 4 respects. I concerned myself to seek God, to remember God, to know God, and to love God. But when I had come to the end, I discovered that He had sought me long before I had ever sought Him. His knowledge of me preceded my knowledge of Him. He had remembered me long before I had remembered Him. And His love for me existed long before my love for Him. So Eruch loved this quote because it is truth with a capital T. He loved to hear people share their stories of how they had come to Baba. And he would always say, "This is my greatest entertainment." Why? Because each story is unique in the details, in the how shall I say, the set design, whatever it is comes from our past. But we are also absolutely the same in the fact that all paths, all ways, Baba said, lead to that one way, which is one by one to Him. And that is the goal of life. So no one gets left out here. No one has to shove or push, because eventually we will all come to realize that there is nothing but God, and that God is within each of us. But as Eruch would share sometimes, he'd say, and Eruch was, how shall I say, working with him, getting to know him, he was the embodiment of humanity. There was nothing supernatural. You know, people sometimes think of spirituality with some sort of supernatural or experiences or lights or color or, this person, they seem to be powerful. But none of that really is spirituality. Spirituality really is the effacement of our lower self. It's that grinding down through our life experience. And mind you, life is like a school. We don't call it a school, we call it life. So it's a different word, but it is essentially the same. Because whatever we are experiencing, wherever we are, whatever we are doing, whatever happens, good, bad, or indifferent, Baba himself said, and Eruch told me this, and I'm sure many others heard it also, I'm up here today sharing with you. And you're having me here because most of you know that I spent so many years from, I would say, at least 2 decades working with Eruch and knew him before even we had a working relationship. So that's there. No doubt about it. It's a great blessing Baba has showered upon me. But truth is truth, and each one's life is the blueprint that Baba has created to bring you as swiftly as possible to the destination, to realize your true self. So never feel that if you're in Ohio or Wisconsin or Los Angeles or New York, that there's a difference. No, if you're a doctor or a mother or a sweeper or a painter or a writer or a teacher or nothing at all and finding yourself homeless on the streets, that very circumstance is not something that we call coincidental. No, it's a circumstance that is there to help each of us in our life rely on him, to recognize that through that circumstance, its difficulties, its, complexities, it has been created for you to help you make that leap to him, to who you really are. We are who we are. I mean, I can't say that I'm not Davana, but what I think of as Davana is really more illusionary, because in my next life I might be Harold. In another life I might be Ravi. Who knows? Or Saguna, or somebody else, or Ming Chan, whoever it is and whatever we is, it's part of our learning through that experience. And it's all based on our past. Baba said, everyone in creation is in one long, continuous procession to him. And Eruch would add that Baba said, of course, the first rank or the first row are those who are closest to him, who are serving him. So we could call them the Mandali or the disciples, those close ones. But when their term is over, the next rank moves forward. So it's a constant going forward. And even Mani, Baba's sister, one day said to Baba, Baba, you say that, we'll see you in the next life, we'll be with you, but I mean, do we have to start all over again? How are we going to find you? What's going to happen? And I always loved the way Mani did this. I'm not as good a mimic as Mani was, but she shared with us how Baba put up his finger and he goes, no, no, no. You pick up. And he took his little fingers and he said, you pick up from where you left off. It is always a going forward. So Baba had said that creation, that my creation, I have created with such precision. You see, such precision to bring you closer to him, to get you to that destination. And Money would put it in another way, which I don't know why. I guess it's in my nature. I love these little sayings and quotes that I would hear from them. So, of course, I don't remember all of them, but many of them have become my favorite quotes, too. And one that Money would say to us in Mandali Hall was, pack your suitcase well, because whatever you put in it in this lifetime is bound to come out in the next. So every one of us sitting here, without exception, somehow packed our suitcases well, because it is no small thing to recognize that Avatar Meher Baba is that same ancient one who has come throughout history, but in different clothing and with a different name, but with the same ancient message. Love God, love me, I am God in human form. But he comes according to the consciousness of humanity, and that is the little mischievous streak of it, because most people, when he comes, don't recognize when he comes again. It would be like if we're in the time of Buddha and suddenly we show up in jeans and a t-shirt and say, I am the one. People are going to go, what? Who is this person saying that? I love Buddha. I'm not going to change. But Baba has assured us also. He has said, whatever your form of devotion, if you love me wholeheartedly, it comes to me. And Eruch learned that when he was quite young, when Baba came to his family's home in Nagpur. You know, Eruch is from a Zoroastrian background, and his mother was the one, as I shared with you, who would sit him on her lap. So she was much more mystical and spiritual in that sense. The father was devout, but a devout Zoroastrian. So when Baba first came to their home, he didn't know or believe that Baba was God in human form. That's a lot to swallow, isn't it? You know, especially when you're devout to another religion, another form of devotion. How can it be? So one day, Eruch is about 14 years old, 13, 14, and he's walking. They had a vast estate that was very beautiful, and his father was a self-made man, and I share all this in the book that I've written, so if any of you have read it, you're familiar probably with this story. But one day they were walking down the paths of the garden, and Baba had requested, Papa, show me around, show me your house, your estate, your gardens. So Papa took great pride in making the garden as beautiful as possible. And Eruch was a phenomenal gardener himself, that he had grown up learning that. But Papa was especially fond of a particular boulder that he had put on one of the pathways through the garden. So he stopped at that rock or boulder, whatever you want to call it, and he turned to Baba, see how unusual this rock is? And he's talking about, you know, the shape of it and the colors in it and the striations of this and that, you know. And Baba's listening, because when the God-man takes human form, he is always at one with whoever he's with. So if he's with a child, he's a child. If he's with a philosopher, he talks philosophy. If he's with a farmer, he asks about the crops and the wind and the rain, so that we feel that closeness to him. That's the whole object of God coming in human form, is to make his love tangible. So he comes in form because we're all in form. And if you think about it, I said earlier, there's nothing but God. That's the truth. There is nothing but God. Meher Baba said, existence infinite and eternal. But just try and have that divine longing for the nothingness of the air here. It's a little difficult as human beings to have that form of love. So in his compassion for us, he informs himself as man so that we can relate to him, so that we can talk to him, so that we can feel that warmth of love, man to man or woman to woman or whatever you want to call it. That's gender is really immaterial because gender belongs in illusion. There is no such thing in reality. Reality is God, and God is beyond all that. So it's so inclusive when you realize who you truly are. But it's a path to get there. So now we're on the path that Papa and Eruch at 13 or 14 was on with Baba. And Baba's listening to Papa go on about the garden and the rock. And then suddenly, as they're about to turn a corner away from the stone path, Baba looks at Papa and he says, because, he's been talking. So Papa says, isn't this rock beautiful? And Baba says, yes, it's very fine. But then he turns to him and he says directly to Papa, even if you can only have love for this rock, that love comes to me because I am the source of everything. So I don't know why, like I said, this is a little bit of a spontaneous talk. Maybe Baba prompted me to be sharing with you what he wants. But in this day and age, in this Kali Yuga, I think that's a wonderful thing for each of us to remember because in a way, we're freed then from trying to make somebody else believe, understand, accept Meher Baba. It doesn't matter because that's in his hands. Baba would say, your job is to let my name come to the ears. But my job is from ear to heart. So whatever one takes and whatever one loves, that love goes to him. So it's between him and each one. Our job is just, if it's possible, to share his name and to live that life that reflects his message of love and truth, to strive for that. And Baba one day was in a theater with Eruch, and they were watching, and the other Mandali also, but Eruch told me this, has told many of us this. It's even written, I think, the story in one of the books. It's a trilogy, this book, Befitting a Fortunate Slave. So sometimes I can't remember myself which is in which book. But he turned to Eruch, and on the screen, it was probably Charleston Heston or whoever was playing Moses at that time. Was that it? Thank you. In the movie theater. And Baba says to Eruch, do you really think that the tablets, the 10 Commandments, came flying down from the sky? No, it is symbolic. Mind you, remember I said how he comes according to the consciousness of humanity at any one time. So at that time when people's consciousness had to have like that physicality of something, because there was idol worship at that time. So the story is that it came from the clouds, and I wasn't there, or I don't know that I was there, so I can't tell you how it really happened, but I can share with you what Baba said. And what he said is, it's all symbolic, because what are the 10 Commandments? They're innate in every single human being. We know what would please him. It's within us. It's just what we do with that in our life. Someone has to now be a tangent spotter for me because I don't know why I went to Ten Commandments. Does anyone have anything they want to ask or share? Or okay, who is that back? Hi there. Pardon me? Yes, Eruch did wear T-shirts and just loose pants with a kind of elastic in them for when he was at Meherazad. And most of the T-shirts that he came from you, came from all of you who would bring them. But I do have a couple of funny stories if you want to hear them, living there. You know, when I was at Meherazad and younger, of course, I was willing to do any and everything to be there. So I have done any and everything at Meherazad from those early years, including, is that Esther? No, okay. Okay. My eyes aren't so good anymore, so you'll have to forgive me. So a lot of the things I did, sometimes I would mend things, sew things, clean things. All these things are part of Meherazad life. So one day, of course, on the Pilgrim Days, Eruch would get these T-shirts. So someone one year, I don't know who it was, so if it's one of you, please take this as a humorous interlude in Eruch's life that I just was witness to. Someone probably thought it was fun and cute and all. They gave him a T-shirt, and I remember it very vividly. It was light blue. I'm very fond of the blues and greens, so I noticed it was a light blue, nice color. But when he opened it up, the message was, "Kiss my face." Eruch said, "Thank you very much," and he turns to me and says, "Well, you put it in the room, you know." So I go put it in his room, and then later he says to me, "You know, how can I wear this? Kiss my face." So nothing in the ashram, nothing is ever thrown away. You know, this was from Baba's time. One always found a new use for something. And Eruch was no different in that sense than on the women's side, which I'm sure many of you have read stories of how Narina threw a needle away, and Margaret needs a needle to mend something, and they all go hunting and find the needle, and it comes right back to the house again. In Eruch's life, people would bring treats for him, and some of them, like, you know, potato chip cans and cheese puff cans, they'd have these aluminum lids, and it would pop up. You would throw out the aluminum lid, and then there'd be a plastic top, and that'd be the end of it. But no. There's a use for the aluminum lid also. And that sat underneath his incense holder so that when the incense fell, it wouldn't burn the table. It would fall onto the little aluminum top that had come from that. So they always used and made use of everything. Now, I don't know how much time, Erin, you're going to have to tell me. I wanted also to share. Should I keep going? I don't know. So I have to finish the story that's not over yet. So one day, shortly after that, mind you, of course, Eruch, I don't think, maybe he wore the T-shirt once to please the person who gave it to him on a pilgrim day, but it wasn't one of the T-shirts that he could actually wear every day because of the message on it. So he put it aside, and then one day Katie calls me over, and she says, "I have a job for you." I go, "Okay." "You have to mend something." I said, "Okay." And what she had done is Eruch must have given her the T-shirt to give to one of the servants or something. So he had given it to one of the servants, but then the servant at first then brought it back because he didn't know English. And when he went home in the village, people who did know English teased him relentlessly. So now the T-shirt has come back, and it's with Katie. This is India, mind you. It's not the West, you know. So Katie comes back. She goes, I want you to sew this piece to that piece. And what Katie had done was she had taken a ruler and measured out the kiss my face. And that portion was cut away. And then my job was to take the bottom portion of the T-shirt and sew it to the top portion of the T-shirt so that Yandeo, that was the name of the worker who got the T-shirt from Eruch, now was many years ahead of his times because he was probably the first Indian to wear a midriff T-shirt. So nothing was ever given away. But that's the ashram life. So I hope that answers your question about T-shirts. At the end of Eruch's life, he called me into his room. His room was given to him by Baba. It's the Mononash cabin. It's where Baba completed his Mononash work. For anyone who doesn't know, and please, please, those of you who some of the terms I'm using or what I'm talking about, if you haven't been to India, if you feel any not getting it or misunderstanding, please feel free to ask me. We're all, as Eruch would say, we're all sailing in the same boat. So if you don't know, feel free to ask. And I'll share with you whatever I have learned. Because don't forget, I also made many, 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 many mistakes during my lifetime and at the ashram. And some of them I have shared. Why? Because I felt that Baba blessed me to be a vehicle to hear many things from Eruch that weren't shared in the hall, that were part of working relationship, being together. Or sometimes I would hear him say something to, let's say Karen comes and she's having tea with him and she asks something and that prompts Eruch to share something with Karen. I was fortunate. I was usually there on the sidelines and I always carried a very small little notebook with me so that when in working with Eruch, I could always write down whatever I had to remember for him, which might be, let's say, Aaron, if you were me, he might say, Aaron, remind me, Bauji's coming at 3 p.m. and we have to give him such and such. Well, I didn't want to forget it because there would also be, remind me, money's coming and such. Remind me, this one's coming for tea. There'd be so many reminders. I didn't trust that I'd remember it. Although Eruch would sometimes tease me and say, why don't you remember? Why do you need to write it down? Just remember. But I didn't want to miss anything, so I would write it down. But in between, like I said, Karen's there, she's having tea with him, and Eruch shares something. If it touched my heart, if I felt it was something that I wanted to remember, I would write it down in between. Well, I was, off sitting away from their little rendezvous together. So all those notebooks I had, and a lot of it is part of what has created this book, because I felt that I was fortunate to be that vehicle. I'm not going to deny that. Baba had blessed me with that, and whatever it is, it must have been something from my past that made that possible. Because, mind you, I had nothing on my side. It wasn't that I had millions of degrees. It wasn't that I knew how to be the best secretary in the world, or the best reader in the world, or the best this, or the best that. Absolutely not. But the destiny was there. Just as all of your destinies have unfolded for you to be here today. Nothing is coincidence in life. So I saw that little hand go up from Sally, but someone's going to have to be my tangent now because there was something I wanted to share about that. So what I would write down when I would read it later And in the years when people were asking me, you should be writing a book, you should be writing a book. And I felt, how can I write a book? Eruch wouldn't want to be glorified in a book. You know, this is again a little tangent, but because I'm going to read some sections to you today, I want to share this. If I was 100 years in the future, or we all were 100 years in the future, and one of you, let's say Clive decides, I'm going to write a book about Adike Irani or Eruch Jessawala or Mani Irani. 100 years later, you can write anything you want. Any material you find, you can write because you weren't with that person, right? And that's how most biographies are. They collect all the archival information and they write the book. But if you were someone who knew that person, who was aware of their likes and dislikes, their personality, how they felt, you might take a big step backwards and say, wait a second, how can I do this? Eruch was not someone who wanted to be eulogized. He wasn't someone who wanted to be glorified. All praise, all focus, no matter what it was he was speaking about, even something as common as talking about what are we having for lunch. Behind it all, his focus was on Meher Baba. Always. In any conversation he's had, whether it was telling Karen she's having tea, saying, do you want a second cup of tea? That seems like nothing, but behind it all, Baba was his focus. And what was that focus? In bringing hearts close. That was the focus. So when people asked me after Eruch passed away, you should write a book, you should write a book, I'd say, no, I don't know about that, because I felt, how can I write a book when I know that Eruch really wouldn't want a book written about him in a glorifying, this life is so great, he was so incredible, all that. So I kept kind of pushing it, no, I don't know. But it just kept going on, and after a while, it's a little hard to take. So then finally, and I'm not someone who has Baba giving me any messages or anything, believe me. I'm just an ordinary human being. And I finally just said to Baba, I don't know. People keep asking me, do you want me to do this? How can I do this? Whatever it was. And one day I was sitting in my room, after Eruch had passed away, of course. And I remembered the little suitcase that had all these little notebooks, many of which the ink has faded so much I can't even read them anymore. But I happened to read this message that is in my preface of the book here, where right before Eruch's life, the message came to him, is your death telegram ready? And that might sound odd, but life with the avatar is always to be prepared. It's the Boy Scout motto. We can call it avatar motto, but it's that motto, be prepared. So all of the Mandali, their messages that would be sent out to the world, when they passed away, were usually written ahead of the event. Sometimes they would be changed at the time, naturally, but there was always that readiness because you never knew what was going to happen. So the office had sent this message to Eruch, and I was with him in his room. He just kind of turns to me and says, what do I care what's written about me when I'm gone? Who the hell cares, now? Go, okay, go write something. So then I wrote something which was very plain, simple, pithy, because I knew he wouldn't want any big thing, So I tried to write it according to what I had heard him say and what was important to him. But it was like just, what do I say, maybe 2 or 3 sentences, and then I come back and maybe he changed a word here or there, whatever it was. But then he said to me, go and take it to the rest of Meherazad, see what they think. So then I had to carry it, which was one of my duties anyway, with correspondence between both sides, but had to show it to Money, Meru, Goer, everyone who was alive at that time. At that point, Meher, of course, had passed away. So I come back to him, and he says, so what did they say? With a little bit of a smile on his face. And I said, well, they said, is this it? And I said, do you want me to write something more, Eruch? And he barely really looked at me. He was writing some work thing was in front of him, but he said, essentially, if anyone wants anything more to be written about me, if anything more is to be written about me, I just want you to write it. Just write it. And apparently I had written that in my little notes later. And the trust did have me send out an article about Eruch's passing. And I thought at first maybe that's it. But when all the push for the book kept continuing, finally I said to Baba, do you want me to do this, Baba? Then how can I do it? And for those who have read my book, that's why it's done in an unusual way of having two timelines. One, of course, does have a biographical component to it, a chronological and biographical component. But the other side of it, it's sort of like a Persian rug. You know, there's many strands. And one of those strands was to try and share what our life, meaning those who would be here, there with him and those who would come in the future, what it was like to have that opportunity to be with him. Because one of the things that meant a lot to me was his giving me a taste of what it was like to live with Meher Baba. Of course, it's limited, but he did answer that I wished for so much. Because as Sally said, I found out about Baba in 1967, 68. I'm not a good date person, so it was either the end of 67 or early 68. I was a college student at that time. And although I came to believe Baba was who he said he was, I had no comprehension of what that meant. So it was always, a big regret that I never saw him. But what Eruch gave was not only that taste, but a picture of Meher Baba's ways. And that is for all of us. So then I came to feel, okay, Baba, if I can somehow weave that blessing that he gave, that is for everyone. I mean, I may have been the channel, I may be been sitting across from him, but what he said is for anyone who is longing to live their life for God. And so that prompted me to write the book, and that's how it got written. But it took 15 years. Yeah. Yes. Who is that?
I'm Diane.
Diane. Okay.
I want to tell you basics, first of all, because I've always been a big believer that the Mandali took after Baba dropped his body, and they welcomed pilgrims in and told stories, that it was passing on what Baba's words even stronger. And then that whole generation, which is you, are the gift that you're giving those of us who never met both the Mandalay or Baba. The gift you're giving is passing on those stories and making them very alive for us.
Yes, because they are alive. Because he is alive. He is here with us this very moment. I don't see him with my physical eyes, and my eyes aren't the best eyes. So Even with my glasses on, I know I'm not seeing Baba physically, but I have that conviction that he is indeed with us here. And Baba has assured us that for 100 and a little more, if he's coming in 700 years, or 200 years and a little more, if he's coming in 1,400 years. It seems like a long time, but don't forget, time is part of our world. Time doesn't exist in reality. Reality is reality. So in that sense, he is still, Baba assured that for this period of time that we are so blessed to be alive and have this opportunity to long for him, to remember him, to bring him into our daily lives in every way we can, which will bring us closer to him. Because longing for him is never in vain. Baba said this. So what you're packing in your suitcase right now is what's going to tumble out in your next life. And we're not talking about clothing. We're talking about those qualities, those aspects that will help you to get closer to your true self, to find him when he comes again. Not actually find him, because he is already, will create that path for you. Each one's way is already destined. But that is the point of why I wove so many aspects into the book, was to make it my own little Persian carpet of allowing people to share with me not only what it's like when you're working with Eruch, which was the more unusual side for most people to read about, but also what he wished to give all of us through his life and through his sharing and the ways of the avatar. WAYS. For me, that is an extremely valuable, important, and often overlooked aspect of being with God, of remembering God, of striving to love God, his ways. Because, and the reason I say that is when he becomes man, he's not pretending to be man. He suffers as man, just as we suffer. And Baba even said, when the avatar comes, he doesn't fake it, meaning he's not God who's just pretending that he's man. No, he becomes man. He becomes that absolute embodiment of humanity. He becomes the perfect man amongst men, but perfection encompasses everything. You can't have an exception if it's perfection. It includes everything. So he becomes perfect ignorance, perfect knowledge, perfect compassion, perfect mercy. All that is encompassed in that human form so that we can relate to him, so that we can draw closer to him. So that, let's say, who's a mother here? Okay. So for all the mothers, you're in a darshan program. Just pretend. Now we're in a big darshan program. I'm sitting here, but just forget about me. Baba's on the dais, okay? You've gone on trains, on bullock carts, walking. This is your big chance to be with Baba. And because you're a mother and you've just given birth to your baby, maybe your baby's only a few weeks old. What is the greatest gift you can give your baby? If you love God, love Baba, you want to bring that baby to Baba's feet, right? So the mother now, she comes before Baba. And people aren't in front of him for that long in these programs, but the mother lays the baby at Baba's feet. And a baby in India, they're wrapped in a little blanket, but essentially they're naked. It's not like in the West where they're already wearing frills and little things and diapers and everything before they're out of the hospital. No, the mothers are poor and most of them just wrap the baby in the blanket, but inside the blanket the baby's naked. So now the baby is put at the foot of Baba. And let's pretend, again, I'm not here. Forget about me. This is Baba, and his feet naturally are out of sandals. He's sitting there on the dais, and he's wiggling his toes and kind of tickling the little baby a little bit. And then he says, bring the baby. So then the mother puts the baby on his lap. And of course, the mother's so proud to have her sweetheart, her baby, right on Baba's lap. And Baba does like any grandparent, would do with their new grandchild. And he's cuddling it and wiggling the baby back and forth and looking at the baby. And then he turns to the mother and he says, so beautiful. What a beautiful baby you have. Like perfection, perfect baby. Then he says to the mother, who is right there in front of him, he says, is it a boy or is it a girl? In India, girls usually have a little nose ring. He can see, for God's sake. It's right in his lap. The blanket's probably open. But no, he asks the mother why, so that the mother can say, Baba, this is my Bonnie baby. Oh, what a beautiful baby. And they have a conversation together. Maybe the mother asks Baba to name the baby. You see? But he's drawing that mother to have a personal relationship. And of course, the baby is blessed undoubtedly. It's in God's lap. But that's what I mean about learning his ways. His ways are what help us, I believe, truly, whether you're in the world or in the ashram, it's immaterial. If you learn his ways, if you learn those things that really are between the lines in most of the Baba literature, that'll help you get closer. Why? Because you'll realize that with God, in a sense, the relationship is so personal that if you talk to him, if you have that, I think it's called munajat, is that in Persian or Arabic? Munajat. If you have that intimate conversation with him, he is always available to you. And the answer that Patrick gets, and the answer that Lynn gets, and the answer that Clive gets, or Donita, each answer may appear on the surface to be absolutely contradictory, you see? But because it's a personal relationship with God, he knows what will help you most. And that's part of learning his ways, realizing that the closer we come to him, the more available is his being with us. He's there for us all the time. So something that appears black and white in print, through having lived with the Mandali and having them share these stories, I have naturally seen that there are many shades. This sounds funny because of the book, but there are many shades of gray, meaning in between, that affect each one if they have that opportunity to understand that. An example would be this. Bob is in a big darshan program, okay? And people are coming. Now, if any of you have read the discourses, in the discourses, of course, I love discourses. It was the first book, really, I read about Baba. But there's a chapter in that all about mental control, birth control, what is expected. So Eruch explained that when Baba writes these chapters, they were taken actually from articles. So they were all written to different audiences and at different times. But they're there because Baba is laying out the framework for posterity, you see? But with Baba, it's not like a religion. where it's just like, you do this or you go to hell. No, that doesn't exist. As a matter of fact, Baba said there is no heaven, there is no hell as it's portrayed. What is the heaven and hell is that after you pass away, after you die, because the soul is immortal, you review your entire life and you see with clear objectivity how you could have done it better. The events. So in that sense, you could call it heaven and hell, because let's say I was cruel to someone, I might, in that passing, whatever the moment is, and seeing that, think, oh, I shouldn't have been that way. Why couldn't I have been bigger hearted? You follow what I mean? So that, in a sense, is a hell, in the sense that you're mentally feeling that sadness that you weren't able to rise to the occasion. But other than that, there's no heaven and hell at all. It's what you mentally go through. And then, of course, when all of that has come like a wheel that turns, and you know how if you spin a wheel on a jack, like a car wheel, the tire and all the wheel, you spin it, and it spins round and round and round and round and round, round and round and round and round and round. And then it starts to go in the opposite direction. That's when we incarnate to another life, is when all the impressions that we needed to look at and are finished, then it's time for us to be born again and to have a new opportunity to move closer to him. And that's why I said everything's from our past. So why did I say this, Sally? Does anyone remember why? Yes. So in discourses in the mental control. Thank you, Aaron. Can I hire you? Would you like to come to India? You can sit next to me in Mandali Hall, and you can be my tangent spotter. I'm old now, I'm decrepit. My memory's not as good, huh? Okay.
You also were talking about the between the lines.
Yes, that's part of it. Yes, the ways, the between the lines. So, in the discourses, there is a chapter that's talking about using mental control. And as Eruch explained, this chapter is for people who want to become spiritual aspirants. Baba is laying out what is necessary for us to move forward. But do you mean to tell me if he has a lover or lovers that come to him and they can't do mental control, he's going to say, out with you? No, this is what I mean by his ways. He is love personified. He accepts us where we are. That does not mean that we shouldn't strive. Hi there. That doesn't mean we shouldn't strive. Of course, we should do our best. But he's absolute mercy and compassion. That's why he's taken that form. So, with bearing that in mind, the discourse says, if you want to live that spiritual life, ultimately, it doesn't matter whether you're married or whether you're celibate. Both are straight ways to God. Both of them work. But ultimately, one has to use mental control, whether it's one or the other. Okay. Now, let's go back to the dais. Baba's in a big darshan program, and his lovers are coming forward for their caress, their hug, whatever it is he always asks and all. A family, now a husband and wife, come forward. He hasn't seen them since the last darshan. And mind you, if you've read about Baba, there weren't that many opportunities. Baba spent so much time in seclusion. Is this? So he sees the husband, and the wife comes, and she's like 8 months pregnant, and she's wearing her sari, but of course 8 months pregnant, no matter how many folds there may be, the person's pregnant. And the husband and wife comes. Baba embraces the man, embraces the wife, and he says, "So, you're expecting a baby?" And the wife is shy. She says, "Yes, Baba." And Baba says, "My blessings are with you," and all. And then he says, very innocently, now mind you, the all-knowing one uses perfect ignorance, as Eruch would say, as his greatest weapon to relate to us. Because now I hope you don't mind that I have all these little tangents, that it makes sense to you all. This is sort of how Eruch talked also in Mandali. Not that I'm Eruch by any stretch, but he would always have all these little tangents there, but he would always tie them together. I sometimes need Aaron as the tangent spotter, so mind carefully, Aaron. There's not a long line behind you. So he says, to the mother, beautiful, may you have a good delivery and a healthy baby. And then just, very casually, he says to the father, because naturally fathers and mothers, they should equal partners in the making of a baby. So he turns to the father and he says, I'm old now, deaf now. How many children did you say you have? Where are the children? Well, Baba, they're home, at school, this and that. He says, how many was it now? And then the father's feeling a little uneasy here. And he says, 7 children, Baba. Baba says, 7 children, how wonderful. But can you afford 7 children? Last time you were here, you told me how hard it was to make enough to feed your 7 children, to put them in clean clothes, to go to school, to pay the fees for the school. Has something happened? Maybe you have a new job, so much more money to pay, for it. He's talking like any close person would be talking, with love and care for your situation, right? So the husband says, no, Baba, I have the same job. He goes, so then what happened? Didn't I say to stop it now, put a cork to it? And the man looks down, and the woman's very shy now. She's pregnant, about to have another baby, and now she's feeling very shy. And the husband says, well, Baba, we love each other. And Baba says, yes, of course you love each other. And the husband says, I just couldn't do it. I can't use the mental control. I can't do it. And Baba says, all right, I can understand that. He says, but now you have so many children. How are you going to feed them all? This is going to be a hardship for your whole family. All right, use birth control. You see the difference, what I'm saying? In that family circumstance, does the God-man turn them away, blasphemy? No, of course not. But that's knowing his ways. But here's another case. Another couple comes to him, newly married. Now, they've only been married a short time. And I always laughed at this one. I found it so humorous. Baba was very humorous. He was very witty. So the couple comes before him, and the husband and wife are there, and he's asking about, their life and everything. And Baba says, very happy, you love me so much. And yes, Baba, we love you. Whatever you tell us, we will do and everything. And Baba says, good. So then Baba says, can you live as brother and sister? And the husband goes, Baba, I'm just newly married, Baba, I can't do that. I have feelings and we love each other. We need to show this love to each other. Baba says, okay, just do it once a year. Then the husband's looking at Baba with big eyes and he says, once a year, Baba? I don't think we can do it just once a year, Baba. I have needs, Baba. And Baba says, okay. He shrugs his shoulder. He says, okay, how about once a month? And the husband is still, now mind you, he's newly married. Can you imagine what he's feeling? And the wife too is so embarrassed, So Baba says, can you do it once a month? Can you control it that much once a month? And the husband hems and haws and says, well, Baba, that isn't really how we see our married life and everything. Once a week, Finally, Baba says to the husband, all right, just do it. But mind you, keep a spade by your bedside. Meaning there's ramifications to everything we do, but he accepts it. If you can't do it, you don't. He accepts that. And the reason I've used this is because I've always felt very sad. I would be in Mandali Hall, and in Mandali Hall there are naturally photographs of Baba, and there are paintings of Baba. And the very earliest painting that came to Baba is Baba sitting on a tiger skin. Those who have been to Meherazad would remember it. And Baba's making the perfection sign. And it was sent to Baba through the post. The person never came, and Baba never met him. And the Mandali have always wondered what happened to that person. So one day in Mandali Hall, a woman came who had the same last name as the painter. So Eruch, in making conversation, says to her, are you related? I've always wanted to know what happened to this man. Well, most people would just say no, and that would be the end of it. But this woman, she went back to where she lived, and she started researching. And eventually sent a letter and came to Meherazad and told Eruch the story of what happened to this painter. She found him in a Quaker colony. And he said, yes, I loved Baba very much, but we had a falling out. And so she's sharing this now, mind you, to Eruch. I'm just a witness to it. And she said to the man, well, your painting that you sent, it's up in Mandali Hall. And Eruch Jessawala, one of Baba's Mandali, had asked me, because we have the same name, to find out who you are, what it is, because Baba had it put up in the hall. Yours was, the first big painting. Because, of course, when Baba's there, there's no need for photographs or paintings there weren't that. So now, of course, there are, because when people come, we like to show them, this is where Baba sat. This is how it was here. This is showing you that. It's different in that sense. So he says, yeah, we had a falling out. And she says, well, what do you mean? He said, well, I still respect him, but I decided I can't follow him anymore, because I read this chapter where he says for, spiritual aspirants, you need to use mental control. And when I heard the story, what struck me was it wasn't in his destiny. His destiny was to still to this day have that painting, a beautiful painting of Baba there. And he is connected to Baba, and eventually will see him or meet him or come or whatever it is. But it's this much and no more. Our destinies have been chalked out. This much, but no more. So for him, because he didn't have that opportunity to learn Baba's ways by reading a book about it or by coming and meeting the Mandali, he felt it's black and white. If I can't do it, then I can't love him. But of course, that's not the nature of love. He comes as that perfect man amongst men to make his love more tangible to us so that we can draw closer to him. So that's why I say learning his ways is so important. Not to do what Eruch said we Americans do a lot, which is, you people, I'm imitating Eruch, you people, you're always trying to find a loophole. And it is true of us. You know, we rationalize, we make try and weave some way. Well, couldn't we do this and love, Baba, like that? He'd say, you people. And with that, I want to read some little sections. Is that okay? From the book that have to do with, in a sense, what it means to strive to live for him. Because Baba also has told us, and you may have this poster at LA, maybe it started here, I don't know, but we have the poster outside on the long veranda outside Mandali Hall, and it's at the very end outside what originally was Kaka's room. And the quotation from Baba says this: understanding has no meaning. I'm just going to intersperse a little bit in between so you'll get it. Understanding has no meaning. Love has meaning. Obedience has more meaning. Now I'm adding the but in saying it. Holding on to my Daman has most meaning. And what does that mean by holding on to his Daman? I take it to mean this: Baba has accepted me as I am, how I am, and for myself, I'm not telling you all to do this, but for myself I say, and in spite of what I am, I'm yours, Baba. And he has accepted me. Otherwise I wouldn't be sitting up here with you, right? So his love goes out to us, and knowing the ways makes us able to receive that love that is always flowing to us. But as Eruch would say, you have to be able to receive it. And if you bring a sieve, the water is going to run through your fingers. Likewise, the grace is there to receive his love, but you have to have the container to hold it. And seeing Baba in that all-encompassing compassion, mercy, charity, all the qualities and attributes. Omniscience is there. He's there. Omnipresence. He is always with us. So if we can remember to think things that we wouldn't hesitate to think in his presence, speak things that we wouldn't hesitate to speak in his presence, do actions that we wouldn't hesitate to do in his presence, that's the way to please him. But we're human beings. We can't always do that. As Eruch used to, now I'm going to try and again imitate him, which I'm not as good at it, but he would be sitting in the hall and he would say, how would it be if you came before Baba and Baba looked at you, and I'm not saying this in a personal way, this is just general, I'm just making it up, how Eruch would do it. He would put his hand, Eruch would pretend like, so now you're coming to Baba for the first time, and Baba goes, I know what you've done, I know what you did. Why, you'd run in right out of the room, because every one of us has done things that we're not proud of or wouldn't want God to know in that sense. But no, he accepts us where we are, how we are, and helps us in that compassion and love to make those baby steps to want to please him and to get closer to him. Why, he says, understanding has no meaning? Because it's with the mind. Baba's written, God speaks. We have this incredible treatise on the whole universe. But why did Baba write it? He says himself, to appease the gyrations of the human mind. We have a mind. That mind can bring us closer to him, or it can drive us away from him. It's how we utilize what he's given us. So Baba and Eruch would always say, always remember to befriend your mind. When your mind is going in directions that takes you away from living or thinking or being in a way that you know he would want us to be, then try and befriend it and say, okay, mind, I know, you want to do that. But you know what? Why don't we think of it the way we just read Baba was saying? Let's try and do this. The mind, Baba says, is like a wild steed. And anyone who's a horse rider knows. And even if you haven't ridden a horse, you know you have to hold the reins. Otherwise, you can get trampled by that horse. You can get, thrown by that horse and be harmed. So our mind is the same way. It can bring us to the threshold. It has brought us, everyone here, our mind has brought us to the threshold. But then you have to get down, leave the mind behind, and let the heart carry you across to the intersanctum. Because mind is limited, and no matter how much we read and think we know, mind, that finite mind can never grasp infinitude. It's an impossibility. Finite mind means there's limitation. We're limited beings. So how can we grasp infinitude? We can't really. We can intellectually think that we are when we read it, but to grasp it, to make it part of our being, no, it's intellectual. And that's good in the sense of keeping the mind towards Baba, but the crucial element is to realize that we need to dilate our hearts, to open our hearts. And that requires effacement, which is not a narrowing down of our existence, but an expansion. As Eruch would say, real effacement means that you expand to include the universe, to include all, inclusivity, because then you don't see yourself as judging others because you know we're all one. If you do something that I haven't done and I say, you did that, next time I'll be doing it. You follow? We have to learn. And then Eruch said, once you learn, you have to unlearn it all. So I was looking to try and figure out what might be interesting for those of you to hear from the book. And Sally suggested doing kind of falls of seeing what came up. So these came up, and they sort of go along with what I'm trying to share with you all today, I hope. And I've talked a lot. I thought this was going to be question and answer, but maybe it'll come later. Okay, let me find the first one. Where is my first one? Did it not come up? All righty. This is the first one. It's from a chapter called Obedience Means What? Now, let me see if I can get a little light here. I'm a half-blind person, forgive me, but I kind of need to get it to see where I am in this. The page number the chapter begins on page 284. I won't read the whole chapter, but it's just a section, and then if you have any questions or want to hear something. Okay, where did I start it? Okay, I guess I'm starting at the beginning of the chapter because we'll start there. It was just after tea when I heard the honk of the trust car. I ran quickly from Baba's dining room in the main house, across Mara's garden, over to the men's side. This was the routine when Eruch and Money returned from the office. As soon as we heard the horn, we would stop whatever we were doing and rush to be there as the car pulled into Meherazad. Then as it turned the corner into the compound, we would all call out, Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. That way, we not only could greet Money and Eruch as they stepped out of the car, but be ready to assist them if necessary. By the time I got there, Money was already walking toward the house, and Eruch was busy distributing the post. "So why are you late today? What were you doing? Sleeping?" "No," I replied. "I was washing my teacup." Eruch, pretending to be serious, said, "What? You should have thrown down the cup and come running." I followed him into his cabin as he continued to admonish me for being late. He was enjoying the opportunity to tease me, as well as to bring home the meaning of obedience. Now this is Eruch speaking. During the training period of the new life, we all had different duties. Some of the companions had to wash the cooking vessels, some feed the animals, boil the milk, or cut up the vegetables. One day, Baba called for all the companions to come immediately. A few were late, and Baba inquired, "Didn't you hear the call?" "Yes, but I was boiling the milk," replied one of the companions. "So what?" said Baba. "All you needed to do was take the milk off the fire or allow it to overflow. What does milk have to do with my orders? As soon as you hear the call, leave what you are doing and come." I still remember the wonderful example of obedience we witnessed. Dr. Gunny had gone out for his morning call, and you know how it was. There were no toilets there. We would just go out into the field. So on hearing Baba's call to come, he came running with his pants down. Now this is narration. Life with Meher Baba was a life of contradiction, where logic was continually confounded. It required one to surrender completely to the will and wish of the Lord under all circumstances. During the years that I worked with Eruch, every now and again he would remind me of the impossibility of living with the God-man unless and until he makes it possible. You want to be with Baba? You wouldn't have lasted a day with Meher Baba. You would have shit in your pants. I tell you, we did not do it. He made us do it. Otherwise, it is impossible. None who lived with him could dare to say that they were able to live with him, that they were able to obey him. It is he who gave us the opportunity to share in his work and live with him. People think that I obeyed him, but it is he who made me obey him. That is how I feel. So obedience is higher than love. It's putting aside our own selves, in a sense, for the carrying out of the behests of the Lord. And that's what their life was. So in this book, I share incidences, of course, with his life with Meher Baba, but also I felt it's important for all of us who aren't there with Meher Baba standing before us to get some idea of what it means to obey him. Obeying him has nothing to do with his being in front of us. You follow what I mean? Those feelings are within us. The Ten Commandments are within us. Innately, we know what he would wish from us. As I said earlier, Bob is up in Mandali Hall. Eruch would sometimes have a pilgrim read it out. We just think thoughts that you wouldn't hesitate to think in front of him, because he is there, even if we can't see him. Have thoughts, speak words, do actions. Now, recently, I think it was you, Sally, or Patrick, who asked me just last night about, but how do we make decisions when he's not here? It's easy for those Mandali who had him standing right before him to tell them, you do this, you do that, don't do this. But what about us? How do we know what he wants from us? Well, there is that, what I said. But being Americans and always wanting to find some loophole, Eruch would answer this question in the hall. So I'll share with you hopefully it helps one of you, if not many of you. How do we, when we're faced a decision, how do we decide what it is that he would want us to do? So Eruch said this, well, sit down. Baba said, sit down in a quiet place. You know what your quandary is there. You have some decision. You don't know, should I do this? Should I do that? Well, every decision we make, there's the pro and there's the con. There's the things that we think are good about making the decision in one way, and then there's the negative aspects that we think about doing the decision in the other way. So what Eruch would say is, write down all the pros on a piece of paper and write down all the negative on a piece of paper, or sit quietly and think of them in your own mind. And share this with Baba. Well, Baba, this is what I think are the pros. And this is what I think, Baba, are the negative. Please, Baba, guide me to making the decision that you would want me to make. Then Eruch would stop. And this is a big, important thing. He would stop, he'd say, but beware. If you are asking for Baba's guidance and you truly want his guidance, then you can't go back on it. Otherwise, it's belittling his giving you guidance, right? What if it turned out to be something that you didn't like? Oh, well, maybe I got it wrong. That wasn't the thing. Let me try it again. No. Then you have to take it as Baba's guidance. So how do you get to that point? Eruch said, after you've thought this through, then try and sit quietly. It doesn't mean a big meditation. Just sit for a moment with it. Ask him to help guide you. The first thought that comes into your mind regarding this, of course. I'm not saying that you have an itch on your head and that's your first thought. No, you've asked Baba for guidance. So whatever comes to you first, then take that as his wish and carry it out. You've asked for it. If it ends up that what you end up doing doesn't come out the way you like it, it's not that Baba hasn't given you guidance. It's like, all right, Baba, thy will be done. There's something for me to learn from this. Help me to have the strength to go through it. You follow? And if it's something that you wanted, then of course, then it's easy to say, oh, well, Baba guided me to do this. But it's not always that way in life. But that's how we bring him into our life. Bringing him into our life means trying to rely on him every moment of the day, which isn't possible normally. But see how kind our Lord is. Baba also said this. Besides remembering him, taking his name, all that's there, Baba gave us this, and I think this is so beautiful, especially living in the world, but it's even anywhere. Baba said how if you're a doctor, you know how if you're a doctor or a surgeon, you're in that operation, you're focused on the surgery. If you're a teacher in a classroom of children, your whole consciousness is trying to get the attention of the children to learn in the best way. If you're a mother wanting to feed her child, you want to give your child the best that you can. So you're trying to make the meal be pretty so that the child's attracted to it, and healthy so that the child gets nourishment. If you're even someone in India, of course this is more true than here. Here we have what we call sanitation engineers, and everything is big trucks and the garbage goes in them, and that's your occupation. In India, they're still sweeping with a broom on the sidewalks. But whatever it is, even that, if you do it wholeheartedly with the thought, he's put me in this position, so I'll do it as best I can. If the garbage falls out of the bin when I'm putting it in the truck, what would God want me to do? He'd want me to pick it up so it doesn't litter the roadside. Whatever you are is immaterial because that is based on what was your past life. So one life you're a doctor, one life you're a sweeper, one life you're a woman, one life you're a man, one life you're this rich, one life you're poor. All that's immaterial. But what is most important is that whatever is in front of you, whatever he's given you to do in this life, is ultimately to bring you closer to him. So do it wholeheartedly. Why? Because Baba says, when you do it wholeheartedly and forget yourself, meaning, you know how when you're doing something you love, if you're a dancer and you're just dancing, you're now in a different, how should I say, realm, because you're carried through into the dance. You're not thinking, should I do the laundry tomorrow? No, you're in that moment. Or if a painter or a writer, any creative art's that way, but any technical thing is also that way. When you're focused wholeheartedly and you lose yourself, meaning thinking of yourself, God is immanent. It means your real self, the God within you, that is your true self, is immanent. He's there. So in our life, even if we're in a situation where we find it hard every moment to think of him, if we're doing what has been put in front of us to do in this life, and we do it wholeheartedly with that intent, then God is there, because God is you. God's your true self. So that's a way of really feeling that remembrance isn't something out there. It's something that you can feel is with you. Or in a fun way to think of it, let's say you have your dinner one day and you and your wife or your girlfriend or your boyfriend or whatever it is, you go out and you decide to go to a movie. And someone says, hey, there's a good comedy. Okay, let's go to a comedy. And you're in the theater and you're laughing and thinking it's funny. One of you is a Baba lover, let's say. And what do you think in your mind? Oh, yeah, Baba loved the movies, loved comedies. I remember one of his favorite movies was Flubber. Baba, are you enjoying this movie with me? You bring him into your life, into your consciousness, into every day. Have I done my duty? Every day, and there's a whole story behind it, and if someone, Aaron, you're my tangent. You'll be here the next time we're at Meherabod, right? So remind me of the story about Eruch when he went out on the tour. Remind me, and I'll tell you what is the real story behind this. I'm starting at the climax, so you'll hear the backstory next time. But every day before Eruch went to Mandali Hall to be with us, before he went to the office to do whatever mundane chores he was doing there. I mean, essentially, he went to be of help to Money, because Baba had said to be of help to her. But whatever it was, in the morning before anyone came, of course I knew this because I was there, but he would close his door, go in by himself, and he would say what Baba had told him to say when Baba sent him out on tour. And what was that? Baba, you want me to speak? Then you speak, Baba. I'm not Eruch, so I can't say for fact that Baba's speaking through me, but I do implore Baba anytime when I have to speak. I say, Baba, You've brought me into this situation, Baba. Please, you guide what is said. You speak then, whatever you want them to hear. You make it what you want it to be. And may your love shine through.
Jai Baba.